yes, we have fundamentally solved scaling proof of work. We've done it in a few key breakthroughs. The first is we've changed our proof of work consensus algorithm to not purely be Nakamoto consensus, but to look at the intrinsic block weight. And so the first step is, well, if you have a conflict at block 10, let's say, then 10A and 10B typically wait till block 11 to say, hey, here's the winner of 10, right? That's what happens in proof of work. It happens with Bitcoin, happens with Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Dogecoin. Any proof of work coin has that resolution. In Quai, we said, okay, we have 10A and 10B, and they're conflicting for the height 10 spot. Can we resolve this instantaneously? And it turns out you can, just by looking at the number of leading zeros in that hash. And so if block A has more leading zeros than block B, and I'm using leading zeros roughly, it's the sort of full actual hash, then block A will be the chosen block for that, and then block 11 will build on that. So you remove some of that contention that you have historically in a system like Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dogecoin or proof of work systems that exist today. And
I got a
so,
question.
sure.
So when you say block weight, I'm sorry, just my brain's doing this. Do you mean weight as in WAIT as in time, or weight as in WEIGHT like depth? So block like the amount like in the mempool, or like the overall time? Like what do you mean by
The
block
latter,
weight? That was one thing.
the latter. And so the heavier a block is from its hash
Okay.
perspective, then because the miner found more work. And so that says something about the block. And I'm using this in approximations, of course, since this is all stochastic and the math of it works out over time. But you could say that technically the miner got a better solution than the other miner instantaneously because it found more leading zeros. And so a miner that finds more leading zeros instantaneously would tell you that it would find more over time. And so that smooths out. And so, but what that does actually for us is that while we do use that block weight heaviness, the WEIGHT, it also allows us to remove the time aspect from it. And that is on purpose because when presenting two different sets of data in there, imagine you just had a bunch of puzzle pieces that you kind of throw out on a table, and then you have two people sort of do the different puzzles. Then when you remove the time element from it, from what we're doing, both of those people arrive to the same conclusion in the same way because they're just using the math, compared to if you did have the time element of it in, say, a Bitcoin example, then you could have said, okay, well, one miner chooses 10A and one miner chooses 10B. And then you have this sort of split in the network for a certain period of time. And then whenever that block 11 is found, then it resolves it. And so you actually maybe have a 20, 30, 40-minute long wait where you're trying to figure out in Bitcoin which block is correct. And this happens in Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure like 3 weeks ago, Foundry or some pool was selfish mining and they were trying to withhold blocks, and that had some delay in Bitcoin. And so it's happening at the largest scale. And
Would
so,
would would you just say selfish mining?
so yeah, selfish mining is
What is
a
that?
process in mining where you withhold blocks on purpose because you have a better timing mechanism in which you are able to have more favorable rewards by withholding that data. And so imagine I'm a mining pool. And like I said, this happened on Bitcoin about probably 3 weeks ago, where I find a Bitcoin block and I did it relatively fast because on average, or if you're outside of the average and you get lucky, because I hate to use the word luck in this mining process because it's all a distribution, but you get lucky,
Right.
quote
I understand.
unquote, and you find a block and you say, wow, I found a block. I'm going to keep this to myself and I'm going to build on top of this in hopes that I find another block in that time window to present two of them at the same time to make more money. And I'm going to reject other blocks and I'm going to say, all right, Foundry found a block. I'm going to reject the ones from Via BTC or the ones from Antpool. And I'm going to just build on the ones that Foundry found. And then by the time that I find maybe two or three blocks, I can beat my 2 or 3 blocks compared to the one that the other part of the network made. And this comes into the play of 51% attacks because that luck threshold shows that 51% attacks in practice on Bitcoin are actually closer to a 34% attack if you can coordinate it properly with selfish mining. Part of our research with Poem actually brought that barrier from 31% back closer to 51%. And so, yeah, all of these kind of playing together.
That's what happened with Monero last summer, right? It
Yes.
was
And
somebody at like
so,
34%. It
yeah,
wasn't a true 51.
yep. Yeah. And so if you have a certain percent of the hash rate, if you're closer to 34% and you do selfish mine based on the timing dynamics of block propagation and some of those distributions, you can have more control of the network at 34% compared to 51. Yes.
Interesting. So this is different and separate from, I want to say it was about a month ago as well, that some mining pool mined like 6 blocks in
Yeah.
a row
Yeah.
on
That's
Bitcoin.
Foundry. They're selfish mine.
This is the same thing?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
this is the same thing you're talking about? Okay, okay.
and
Okay.
so a lot of that gets removed in what we're doing due to the nature of how blocks have to be revealed. And then we also have a property in the system called work shares that enable more instant finality or faster settlement because we are subsampling hash rate. So so for Bitcoin, Bitcoin has a very bad clock. It is a 10-minute clock. And every 10 minutes, they try to find a block. It's not true. Bitcoin will not find a block for an hour if you kind of on average look at it a bit. Or Bitcoin will get a block in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's just that
Yeah.
that is the way it happens with the mining
To
process.
10 minutes is like the target
Mhm.
when you average it out, right?
Yeah. So 10
Yeah.
minutes is the target. It's a very bad target because it's just so wild. And so if you actually try to send Bitcoin on the layer one and you're like, I'm depositing some Bitcoin into Coinbase, then you might have to wait 2 hours because they're like, we want 6 confirmations. And so go eat some lunch, go for a workout, sauna a bit, come back. On Quai, with our 5-second target, we also have a subsample that happens roughly every, I don't know, like 300 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. And that 200 millisecond sample gives us the current state of where all of the hash rate is. And so not only are we saying we're going to take a 5-second block, but every 200 milliseconds, we're going to allow a proof of this hash rate to be submitted to the chain. And what that's doing is that's finalizing the system as a whole. So even if you were to have 51% of the hash rate, you couldn't go and do a selfish mining attack because you would immediately see that hash rate go away. And then you would know to reject it and you would know to sort of signal that out. And so all of that looks like a sort of a fan of hash rate that you can view and look at across Quai.
So in this 200, 300 millisecond way, it's sort of like an efficient audit,
Mhm.
right? Is that okay? So is that done through zero knowledge proofs? Like, how is this happening so quickly? Like, what's the mechanism? It's just efficient.
Yeah, it's just efficient. And so zero knowledge, if we threw zero knowledge into this, it would just blow up everything. We've been very
Okay.
on not having zero knowledge. And people are very juiced up on zero knowledge because it gives you privacy. I get it. Zero knowledge is great for certain things, but there's a reason why Zcash has 3-minute block times or 75-second block times. That's just they have to operate that way. They want to get it down to 20. But I'm interested to see how that's going to work. From our side, the hash is just a header. So you're submitting headers as you're mining Quai because you are finding these subsamples. And so imagine you're merge mining. Quad is like merge mining times a billion. We merge mine everything. We use the same thing across the block header, across another auxiliary blockchain, across 3 different shards in Quai, across these subsample work share things. So think of just like one vertical slice where we mine this whole entire piece of data. And what is posted on chain for the verification and the subsample that I'm talking about is just a more lightweight header. It's just a smaller header. It doesn't have block data. It doesn't have transactions. It's just the header data. And it says, hey, I was mining this header. I'm pointing back to this header that we all agree on, the most recent tip. And if we're all kind of doing that same thing and posting these 200 millisecond proofs, then we can all see that we're building on top of the same block, which is good if you're doing that every 200 milliseconds. Hey, everybody's building on the same thing, and we're going to check this very fast. Versus in Bitcoin, we're saying, hey, everybody's building on the same thing, and we're not going to find out if everyone's building on the same thing until potentially 2 hours later. That's not good for anybody, right? That's not good for exchange deposits. That's not good for bridging. That's not good for any sort of latency. You want everyone to say that we're building on the same thing, and we all agree as fast as you possibly can to ensure that you get that real world finality and settlement that users deserve to have, to make sure that nothing's going awry in terms of transferring and moving and having that disallocation.